Well, this is just to give you some idea of the wet rubbing process. This is wet at the moment, which is quite shiny, but I've rubbed this down with the 300 grit, 320 grit paper. You can see that's quite smooth there, where that little mark was. And all these little black bits I still have to get out, and you can see how this process works. These are scratches here that have been left from sanding and little ridges and things, and I keep sanding until all of that goes, and then we've got a smooth finish just like we have here. There's still a couple of little tiny spots there. You can see if it'll focus, I'm not sure about that. There's a scratch there, so I'll just keep sanding until all that disappears, and then I know that I'm going to have a very smooth finish. It's laborious, but it's really worth it in the end. So when all this is done, that base primer coat will be very smooth, and I'll put a couple of coats of primer over it just one more time, and then sand that back with a 400 and then a 600. So we keep going until all that black is completely gone. It's also very important to do it in long strokes like this. I'm using quite a flat rubber block here. You can buy bigger ones, but this one suits me. Very important to do it in long continuous strokes rather than short ones like that, otherwise you just have a little indentation, and better with a block than with your hands, otherwise you just get this sort of indentation. You can't get a nice flat smooth finish with your hands. Well, I've spent quite a bit of time on this front shroud section now, and I'm just about to put the top coat on. I think it's pretty good. This has had a lot of wet rubbing, a reveal coat or of some sort, just to make sure that it's flat. There are some very slight imperfections in the steel, and I really think that that's part of the pressing process initially. White is Old English white is a fairly forgiving colour, of course, not like a red or a black or a dark blue or anything like that, so I'm hoping that's going to be okay. This has had a wet rub with some 400 and then some 600, just with water as a lubricating medium, and I've gone over it with a tack rag. So I think it's pretty good now for taking the top coat. I've already done the underside, and there's the bonnet hinges there, and a couple of the attachment pieces for the front shroud, which I also have to do. This is the paint I'm using. It's a new Mini Cooper colour called Old English White, Pepper White actually, Pepper Old English White in brackets there, and it's an acrylic lacquer, as I said before. So we thin that 50-50 with the thinners, and we put I'll probably put 6 coats on here, and then when that's finished it'll rub back and polish up. I don't have room, I'm running out of room here as you can see, so I have to use the workshop space I have, and that's why I'm using acrylic lacquer, because if I get any dust in it or anything it will buff out afterwards. I don't need a dedicated paint bay, so I'm going to have a go at that now. Well, there are a few more little bits and pieces that I've fitted onto the engine. Nothing particularly exciting, but I suppose interesting if you're doing it. The first thing is this accelerator linkage here, which is incredibly complicated, and I'd broken the original little nylon bracket there, so I replaced that. These air hoses here, the front breather hoses, I've left that pipe there copper. It should really be painted, and as should the heater pipe. I'm still deciding whether or not to do that. If I have to, I'll whip them back off again and paint them. I decided to put these heater pipes in here, which are fairly simple, but I decided to do it before I put the shroud back on, because it's really quite tricky. I don't know how you would get in there with all the shroud on. It'd be a bit of a nightmare to do. So I decided to do all that before I fitted the shroud back on, although I probably would just put the shroud on and let it sit there rather than bolt it into place for a while, in case I have to do any more work on anything in the engine bay, because it's much easier when it's open like this. I'm not all that happy with the engine mounts. I had to modify them slightly because I thought it was sitting too high, and now as the engine's settled it looks like they might be sitting a bit low, so I'm going to pull those off again and have another look at them. I've also lashed out and bought an exhaust system. This is not a stainless steel one, it's just a plain steel, mild steel exhaust system. I've heard that the stainless steel ones don't give such a nice engine note, but I don't know whether that's true or not. There's a cost factor, of course, and really this mild steel system is going to see me out. This came from the UK. It's from AH Spares, who are fantastic to deal with. I've always been very happy with their service, and it's got the proper bending pipes, and I haven't tried obviously to fit it yet, but I have great faith that it will fit properly. And here is the almost finished paintwork. This has come up really quite well. This is straight off the gun, hasn't been buffed at all. There's a little bit of orange peel and a few little imperfections, but being acrylic lacquer, this will rub up really nicely, I think. I've got plenty of coats on there. I had a little bit of trouble initially. I just, I don't know, had a bad day or whatever and got a few little runs and things in the first few coats, so I just left it for a while, and a week or so and it hardened off, and I wet rubbed it back with some 1200 grit paper, and then today I've put on about another 4 or 5 coats on top of what was there, so there's a lot of paint on there, and off the gun, as I say, slight orange peel. I don't know whether it shows up on the camera there, it probably doesn't, but that will come up quite well, I think. I'll give it a 1500 or 1200 wet rub just to knock the top off the orange peel and then buff it up, but that won't be for a while. I had to start again with a couple of the areas that still need a little bit of work, and I think it's really worthwhile doing that when it's in primer, but I'm actually really pleased with the way it's come up, and the colour is very nice. I don't know whether it shows up really on the camera, it might look a bit white, but it's a beautiful antique creamy sort of white, and it's going to look really nice, I think, with some red upholstery. I've contacted AH Spares and they're sending me some samples of their colours, and I've got some from John Skinner as well, so I'm looking for a red that's not too bright, that will go well with this. Yeah, I'm very happy with that so far. Of course, it's going to be a long time yet before I do any trim work, but as it stands, I think this is pretty good. Some of this area here has some very, very, very slight imperfections, so slight that they don't even show up under a reveal coat. They show up with slight little, almost little dents, and I think they're in the original pressing process of the aluminium. I did all the filling I could, and I wet rubbed back, and it looked flat and it looked fine, and then I put the paint on, and I'm still noticing some little imperfections. Hopefully that will disappear, or at least not be quite so obvious when it's all buffed up and flatted down again. And I think, we get to the point where we have to decide whether it's going to be a show car or a driver, and it's going to be a driver. So some of those slight imperfections are probably part and parcel of it. The white, of course, is a much more forgiving colour, as I said before, than the black. So that's the progress so far, and really pretty happy with that. It was a good day to finish spraying today. It's about 30 degrees Celsius here in autumn in Adelaide, and not a breath of wind, so it's really quite a beautiful day. The weather will start cooling down a little bit, and it's going to become difficult to do any more spray painting, so I think I might try and get the bonnet and boot done before the winter sets in. This shroud is not fitted on properly yet. You can see it's not attached there. I'm just leaving it, and I won't fit it for a while because I want to have the option just to lift it off if I need to do anything more to the engine, as I said before, I think. So I think the next step, during the winter, I will put on the fit the wings and the doors and do any welding and repair work that needs to be done in them and get them ready so that when spring comes I can hopefully do some more painting. It's good. I've ordered some aluminium rivets, some solid aluminium rivets to fit this back section on. I'm going to have to make some sort of rivet punch to squeeze them down with, so I'm putting my mind towards that at the moment. But there it is, and coming along quite nicely.